Hi, welcome to the Daiku podcast and Daiku Game Pitch. Joining me today is Lost Pages Paolo Greco. He is the creative mind behind Lost Pages and the publisher of such great titles as Beyond the Pale, Book of Gaub, and Wulfwald, amongst many others that we're going to talk about today. So, Paolo, welcome.
Oh, thank you. Hey, everybody.
First of all, some of the titles I just mentioned are like kind of mainstays within the OSR world, which we absolutely love here at the Daiku podcast. And I really want to talk about your publishing background, your design background, all the things that we love. But first of all, as always, tell us, how did you get started in this crazy little hobby of ours?
RPGs at large. I started playing like Choose Your Own Adventure, Turn and Troll games when I was in P4. I was about 9, and I ran Turn and Trolls for like my school buddies. Nobody cared. And then like I played Wizards for 20 years until like I started to blog, and I started to blog basically in the year after Gygax died.
Mm-hmm.
And I believe that's where what now, like the OSR started to stop being just what it was, and started to become more of its own thing, if you know what I mean. And incidentally, when I started blogging, I never blogged much. Like for me, the blog is not a good platform. In general, I find writing quite painful when I start writing, so I do it as least as possible. However, I started like writing games, and nobody would publish it, and so I published it myself, and that was an adventure fantasy game.
So to back up a little bit here, and like when you're talking about like blogging and the OSR, and like kind of like that was like the very early days of the OSR, what kind of like made you like go from like, okay, you've played Tunnels of Trolls, you've been playing like Wizards of the Coast, or like, you know, the TSR era?
Yes.
What kind of made you go, I've got something that like I'm trying to find other than what's available?
So I went through the whole, like in Italy, Dungeons and Dragons was red box.
Yeah.
And that's what I used to play. Then I got the AD&D in English, second edition. And then I got third edition, and I played that for 10 years. I had a 9 years third edition Greyhawk campaign that ended up with a party putting together the Road of the Seven Parts and killing the Mishka the Wolf Spider with a TPK. Like that combat ended up with a total party kill. Like the wizard broke his like staff of power because he found himself like with the wolf spider, but alone. Everybody else died. So it was like, well, this is the last. This is how we go, I guess. And then Gygax died, and what happened is that there was this blog I was reading, and the blog is called "I Waste the Buddha with My Crossbow."
Yeah.
And it started to write about that, and it started to write about Delta's blog, Delta's D&D.
Mm-hmm.
Delta is the oldest blog that I still read. And Delta was reading the original Dungeons and Dragons booklets and blogging about it. Was doing basically a page by page, and I started to read that, and that's where I started to look at old games back again. As much as I really enjoyed that approach to rules of the third edition, I found that it was just like, frankly, exhausting.
Mm-hmm.
I yearned for simpler times. And for me, simpler times meant go back to the red box. And it's still what I run now. I still have like...
Yeah. And you didn't get rid of them at any point on any of your travels? I know.
No, I did sell it. This is a copy I got for £1 at in a like used at a game shop in Edinburgh.
I think it was a commonplace, including me. I remember at some point I thought, geez, I am just completely done with role-playing games. I had like bins that I had been carrying around forever. And then finally I said, okay, I'm going to sell them. They've been just sitting there. And then, boy, that was one of the biggest regrets that I've ever had in my life. So if you're in that boat, don't sell. That's my advice to you.
My boat was even more stupid. I sold D&D because I thought, if I want to get... I'm playing AD&D now, and I actually prefer it as a game. I actually really like second edition AD&D, for example.
Yeah.
But there was something that called me back to Radbox, even after all these years. And I think it's just because it's extremely small.
Yeah. And Redbox was my first start too. I just absolutely everything just like it was at the right age for it. The art was just special, and it's funny. I don't know if it was the same. Were you in Italy at the time that when AD&D came out, and I had all my Redbox and Expert and Beckme, and everybody else was like, "Oh no, that's like a kid's. That's like basic." And so everybody was kind of like, "Okay, no, let's play AD&D." So my box just kind of sat there unused and unloved for a long time. A long time.
No, like for me it was like when I went to high school, I found some other older kids that were playing AD&D second edition, and that was like 94, 95. So that's when I started to play. Incidentally, I got AD&D for a study during a study holiday in Dublin. I just randomly walk in a Virgin Megastore, and there was an entire section for RPGs in 1993, I think 1994. But the important thing, it was I think also like the promotional launch for Spelljammer.
Yeah.
And so I got Spelljammer. I thought, like, this is the most amazing thing I've ever seen in my life. It's like boats in space with wizards.
And when did you move from Italy to which you're currently in Scotland now, correct?
Yeah, correct. It was in 2004. It was 20 years ago. 20 years ago in a month.
Yeah.
What's the day today?
2024, at least.
No, what's the day?
Okay. October 23rd.
Okay, like I'm almost like I'm 3 weeks away from the 20 years anniversary of me moving to Scotland.
Wow.
Incidentally, my parents might be about to sell their house, and they still have a bunch of RPGs in their basement. So I'm building a second bookshelf to house.
You're gonna run out of room. And I don't know if you saw recently. I haven't read the article. I'm not a subscriber to Rascals. I think there was an article about the growing role-playing designer community in Italy. And I've kind of seen it. I've been to. I was in Italy a couple of years ago, and I stopped in the big store in Florence, and that was like awesome. It was like a great experience.
You went to Stratagemma?
Yeah.
Stratagemma is one of the oldest, possibly the oldest Italian RPG shop that is still running.
It was a huge surprise. It was like right in the center of Florence, and I everybody else was looking for museums, and I thought I'll look it up on my phone. I wonder if there's a game store nearby, which I often do when I'm traveling, and just see. And it was like literally like a half a block away, and it was huge, and it had a ton of indie games. And I got Hypotellurians there because I was just like, oh, I'm there, but better buy that one.
Yeah, Francesco does a very good job of running it. it's kind of weird because when I started, I remember seeing the ad. There was this old like gaming magazine called Chaos in Italy. They did RPGs, and I remember seeing the ads for Stratagemma in Chaos in 1989 or something like that. So for me, it's been there forever. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like the OG of the Italian shops shut in Milan, sadly. With that, a bit of my heart went away.
Oh. Okay, I got us down a rabbit hole here. So you're starting to do blogging and that kind of thing in the OSR early days, and like Google Plus and all that kind of stuff. And when did you kind of get to the point where you went, you know what, I'm going to become a writer / publisher?
I did a master's in research. Master's in research, it's rather than being like a taught master, is like a research master. And I think in 1 year I wrote something like 150,000 words.
Wow.
Or like some at least. And it's like all academical writing. So it's not as easy as writing about elves. And that's what I learned to write. So now if I want, I can just sit down and type away for hours.
You get that muscle memory of like, it's not a problem to write that much anymore. Whereas I think a lot of people, including myself, like I form a lot of ideas, but actually to sit down and at the computer and like get them out is very difficult.
Yeah, like I actually find that like the mood is the wrong siren. Like there is no muse. Just if you want to write, you sit down and you write, and if you are not writing, it means you don't want to. Like if you are rather doing something else, play video games, doom scroll, watch YouTube, play Factorio. Sorry, I have Factorio in my mind because Factorio 2 just got released, and that's what I was playing before the stream. If you're doing something else and you could be writing, it's because you don't want to write.
So that's good advice, to sit down and actually like spit it out.
Just, do the tappy on the keyboard. Eventually words will accumulate. And if they're garbage, you can fix them, improve them, or throw them away, or hide them in shame, or even release them if they're good. Until they're out, you never know what they are.
Yeah, procrastination is the enemy of getting stuff done for sure. Like, you can think about things and you have all these great ideas, but until you get them out and test them and refine them and challenge them, you never know what you're actually dealing with at the time.
100% correct. It's a bit sad. There is this game I've been trying to write for something like 29 years. It's called Gangs and Bullshit, and it's basically some sort of, I wouldn't say an FKR. It's almost like a Nordic LARP. There is a bit of game mechanics, and you play gang members. And the entire game was written as an angry rebuttal to Blades in the Dark. No, I mean Blades is its own thing, but it has a very specific approach, and I wanted to do something that is the opposite. So it's a game that is like 90% planning and 10% resolution, where the players just talk among themselves, and then they tell the referee what they do for the week. It's a domain game in a way. Just writing it is almost impossible, and they found out it's impossible because organized crime is just hard to explain to people that are not familiar with how it runs, what it does, how it works, and why it works. But something that people understand easy is wizards. If I tell you you're a wizard, you understand. So in the past year, I've been developing this game called Sorcery Shenanigans, which is the same, but you're a wizard.
Yeah.
And that's way easier to write. But I need to write it straight after I play storm it, because it's a play storm game. If you know what, like, play storming is that thing where like you're building the game, you're brainstorming the game as you play,
Yeah.
At the moment, it's strictly in playstorming territory. It has like a skeleton, but until I play it again, I don't really remember all the things that I have to write. Like I can write all the procedures, but there are a bunch of things to put in that I forget.
I've not heard that term playstorming before. Have you? Is that new to you? Did you come up with that, or have you heard that?
I read it in Levi Cornelson's I think blog or newsletter, and it's on a sliding scale. Like I think it's step 1. So there is a 0 to 7 formality in game rules, and 0 is absolutely not formal at all, and 7 is 100% formal system, like a board game.
Yeah.
And RPGs are usually in the middle because the DM does some adjudication.
Yeah.
So RPGs are not completely formal system. There are some things that the rules don't cover. And playstorming is like immediately after there are no rules.
Yeah.
It's like we are exploring rule space, but there are some rules that we're playing around with.
And you mentioned FKR and like Nordic LARPs, and for those that aren't familiar, the Free Kriegspiel Revolution is kind of the terminology, is as if we needed more terminologies. But do you find yourself? Do you enjoy that space more, where it's like kind of the FKR OSR side of things, where it's a little bit more free form?
I find it's easier to play with a bit more rules because rules provide with some abstraction. So like abstraction makes easier to think about things. I really enjoy FKR. Actually, like I managed to play Braunstein at Garricon in 2015-16 with Wesley. I played Braunstein 1 and Braunstein 4. And it was great. It was amazing.
Yeah.
It was like really showing where the hobby, I think, was born. I believe that is the first role-playing game, and also the first Nordic LARP, incidentally. And it really, I think, pushed me in a different direction design-wise, where I still have rules. But since then, I think like I reduced the number of rules, and I added a lot of like tasty sides, like either small systems or tidbits. And there is this thing that if you combine all these small system and tidbits together, sometimes like you don't know what's going to happen. Like rules wise, it might be a mess. So it needs like adjudication. It needs like players buy-in. It needs stakes discussion, for example.
Yeah. So what I find is with that whole FKR kind of mentality, and I've heard some people refer to it as like, FU game design, where it's like where it relies upon the referee to adjudicate and be the arbiter of the world, which is sometimes difficult. It's like like a jazz band, where they're improvising and there's like some artistry to it.
Absolutely.
But if you are beginning to learn how to play the trombone, like you're not in that space to be able to perform at that level. Yeah. So it does require a certain amount of like skill set on the referee's point of view, or the opposite. And this is, I always say this, when I played the Red Box when I was a kid, I didn't really understand the rules properly. So I improvised and I just kind of made things happen. And I always reflect upon that time in my life, and I go, that was like probably some of the most fun I had role playing. And I was so naive that it was like jazz, but I didn't know that I was doing it.
I think the worst thing that a game master could do is listening to imposter syndrome and thinking that they can't jam. 2 weeks ago, 2 of my players independently Like this has never happened to me before. Independently, like let's send me a message on Discord saying, "Oh, I haven't had this fun." One said, "Like I haven't had this fun since I was a teenager," and the other said something similar. And essentially, they both said that it's down to 2 or 3 reasons. The first one is that I'm the player character's biggest fan.
Yeah.
And I really want them to be awesome. Not necessarily to succeed, but like to do awesome shit. And the second is that if players want to do something, I let them do something. And, maybe I tell them, oh, if you try to do this, it might be terrible in X, Y, Z and other things you have no idea about. But I really let them do whatever they realistically can. Like if they want to flood the dungeon, I'm down.
Yeah, that's what makes it fun, right? Is like the crazy parts of like their ideas and coming up with like, how could this happen? And then you trying to figure it out for them.
Yeah, and for some bizarre reason, like one of there is a lot of necromancy in my current game. I'm running Stonehell, which is already a pretty like, terrible place. But also like there are 2 necromancer. One is an NPC, and the other is now there is a gnome necromancer in the party. The gnome necromancer reanimated as a zombie an ogre, and now is riding the ogre cracked skull like a saddle. And put a mangler in the chest of the ogre skeleton because he needs to crush corpses for spells. Yeah. And it's terrible.
It is those odd situations and circumstances that flow out of like those.
Yeah, and this flew out of play.
That makes it.
Yeah, right? Absolutely. And I think having like the principle of the sandbox, I think it works really well for mega dungeons, because if you look at them, they are like, rooms, but they're actually a network of interesting things. I mean, if the dungeon is written well, they're interesting things. If not, they're not interesting. But I try not to play those. But for example, now I'm running Stonehell. And one of the most amazing things that happened is that the party was making some sturges. How do you call it in English? Sturges?
Yeah.
Sturge bird, like the blood bird. Yeah. And they were grilling it. Like as a random encounter, a goblin patrol found them, and it was like a mid reaction. And the face of the party, that is a warrior with high charisma and no other good stats. Low intelligence though, which is the perfect mix. Just offer them some like grilled blood chicken, and that's how they become friends with the Red Arrow Goblin clan.
It is those fun things. And going back to like the sandbox and the dungeons and that kind of thing, I keep going. Back to your point of like writing stuff, and I always go, I just don't have time to write it. And I got this idea, and it's probably not. I've heard it in other forms, but I keep kind of going like in a zoo when they have animals in a zoo, and they call it enrichment. So I wanted to write a blog post about enrichment. That they put things in there to excite the animals. Their lives are not that really that exciting, and so all of a sudden you put a beach ball in with elephants, and it's very exciting for them. They're like, "Whoa, what is this? How can I kick this? What do I do with it?" And then they start playing balls. Correct. And I like that term enrichment of the dungeon, that you put things for the players to poke and prod and pull levers and do things, and that ends up triggering all sorts of shenanigans. And that enrichment, and I've heard like kinetic energy and a few other kind of things, but I really like the term enrichment, which zookeepers actually use, is put shit in there to make people do stuff, and they will.
Something that it's kind of funny, because this is a concept that in the OSR has come out several times, and I think we really saw how strong it was when during Google Plus time there was this thing called Constant Con and Flails Nails, and basically a bunch of people were going from an adventure to the other with their own character sheet. So today I'm playing this adventure with you. Saturday I might play the same character in another adventure, and so on. And so you would have people you never met before, or maybe you met with, but player characters, they were whatever, with whatever equipment, whatever spells. And some game master flat out said, like, please use only spells from the player's handbook. And some others said, like, I don't care. But like you would see these kind of like interesting, weird items, spells, powers, whatever else, abilities, whatever, mixing in these interesting ways, brought together by minds that never played before. And I don't know how many people were actually flails nailing, but I guess like maybe low hundreds.
Yeah.
And this is where like this all like kinetic energy thing came out from. And it's like, I remember on Google Plus writing this post, and they call it like bagatelle accretion design, where you keep on throwing up weirder shit in a sandbox until things start to spin out of control. And that's where you want it to be. Like, you want a situation that is teetering between balance and crazy.
Yeah.
And depending on players and whatever, you can just push it over the line, and then it goes back at rest.
Yeah.
And sadly, I never put it on the blog, sadly. But it was it was like, it's like, imagine if you had like, imagine Pokemon. You know, there are a bunch of Pokemons, and also like they evolve and whatever. But imagine if, like, with playing one at a time, you played with like 2, 3, 4, 5 out at the same time. Imagine the possible interaction that their powers might have. And yeah. And I remember like the first similar thing we've done like as a teenager. So I had this wizard, and there was a cleric in the party. We're like playing at companion level. Like my wizard was like level 21, 22 or something like that. The cleric also was like maybe 20. And we meet the Lich, the big bad evil of the campaign. And me and the cleric had agreed that like on a turn that we both win initiative against the Lich, he was going to cast Blade Barrier over the Lich, and I was going to cast Reverse Gravity on the Lich. So we would like go up through the Blade Barrier, bang on the ceiling, then Reverse Gravity drops because it's like instantaneous in BX, and go through the Blade Barrier again in the same round, which is wrecked it. The Lich was wrecked in the second round of combat. But this is like something that you could do with the basic rules.
Yeah.
But if you have like tens of game master creating stuff, and like a big ecosystem giving you interesting new toys, interesting new things to combine, you have these high energy environment that leads to ridiculous things happening.
Yeah. Well, I'm gonna try to promote enrichment. That's my new
enrichment. It's good.
It's good. But so now that we've gone down the rabbit hole, and we've got the underlying philosophy on how you kind of play games. When did you actually get into like, what was the first thing that you actually wrote? You talked about the adventure fantasy game, and that was like a kind of a D6 pool system.
Sort of pool. It's actually like one die only. You roll one die. And it's similar to a D20 system in a way, but the concept is that you need to roll a 5 or more to succeed. And there is a plus or minus 1 depending on whether you're skilled or not, whether you have good kit or not, whether it's hard or easy. And also, if you succeed, you can try a learning check on the skill. And once you accumulate enough learning point on the skill, you become expert on the skill, and you have a +1 on the roll. Incidentally, you collect the word of the letter expert to become expert on the skill. So after six learning checks on a skill, you become expert on it.
See, this is a problem. I was like reading up on it before the live stream, and I was looking at that, and it said +1, +2, and I was thinking die pool, but it actually now makes more sense when you describe it.
It's
when
like
you describe it like that, it's a +1, and then you get over 5 at 5 or more, and it's a success, right?
And it's a very dumb system. It does. You start without any skill on your character sheet. You just learn them as you go.
Yeah.
You learn them through learning rules.
And so that was like a brand new system that you developed there. And how come you didn't just kind of brush it off with a OSR? Okay, roll D20 and.
Okay, first there were already in 2010 there were way too many clones. That's why we did not make Wulfwald into a clone. Like things got even worse. Like there are even more clones. I don't think it does anybody any favor building more clones of the game, to be honest. I mean, at least for me. Like, also because it made more sense when Wizard removed stuff from print on demand and from the digital edition. Like for a while, Wizard of the Coast, after putting out, the red box on PDF, took it away. So it made sense to make retro clones. Now there are a million retro clones, and Wizard has a different approach toward like back catalog. I don't think we are starved. The other, also, it was not a complete system. 5 more is based, so that entire roll 5 or more is based on some rules to not have rogues in the party as a class, so that everybody can do roguish stuff that Sham put out. Sham had this blog called Sham Grogan Blog. Sham is kind of like my OSR dad. And occasionally he writes me and goes like, "Hey, Paolo, I'm thinking about writing this thing." I was like, "Hey, awesome, how are you doing?" And then he vanishes for another year. I was like, "It's okay, Dad." So I shouldn't call him Dad, but it's like, if he didn't blog, I would not publish. You know what I mean? Like, it's like, that's why. 1 second. Dave Bowman is actually credited, like Adventure Fantasy Games says, based on a design by David Bowman, because David Bowman is the author of the 5 more system. Like I polished it and I redid the whole experience thing, and like I made it a bit more organic and rules wise a bit tighter, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
But the idea was his.
Cool. And I know we've got a comment here on YouTube of Book of Gaub is one of my favorite TTRPG supplements. And I have to say, like, I mean, looks awesome. It is pretty. And
I'm glad. This was my coming back to the scenes after a few years of like doing small things. I have my own like leather-bound purple, silver copy.
Moving it the wrong way, but trying to get that glint off it.
Yeah. And it's kind of funny. This was the folio edition that we had made, what we call the Cabal edition. And this color is not normally available at bookbinders, but the binder asked me, "Hey, Paolo, if you order at least 20, 30 copies in a color, that will make you a bespoke batch of leather." So this is a part of a bespoke batch of dyed leather that the tannery made for us.
Oh, super cool. And since we're kind of like leading into the publishing and the printing part of it, I know a lot of my channel subscribers are aspiring game designers. And prior to the start of our live stream, we did talk briefly about the fact that we are horrible business people, usually game designers. and like lots of creativity and lots of ideas. But when it comes down to like, okay, I've made a PDF or I've done the layout, now what? But you seem to be navigating this balance very successfully. So how did you learn all of these skills?
By doing them badly until I got good. Well, it's not entirely like this. Like, for example, like there are many things going on. Like, one of them is like the whole like book design part. And that you can just like, you get some books on book design, you read them, you study them, you make some books, you like, oh, this is garbage, I'm gonna make better. And you do this for a few years, essentially. Or a few months if you're good, because like maybe I'm just garbage and it took me way longer than for many other people. Like I'm a software engineer by trade. I'm not trained in visual design. And like for the book production, it's just a matter of making books. I know I'm making it sound more dumb than it really is, but there is nothing that beats actually doing the thing that you need to practice in order to get good. Especially in this case, because there is a lot of the on-ramp is kind of hard, but also kind of easy. As in, there are a million things that you can get wrong, but if you're willing to risk getting them wrong on cheap projects, it's okay because it's cheap. And if you print like 50 copies of a book and it costs you like, I don't know, $150, and then they're printed terribly, you only lost $150.
Yeah.
Which it's in the grand scheme of things, okay.
It always scares me when I see somebody do a Kickstarter with like they've got dice and boxes, and this is their first one, and they got this and they got that and they got this little things, and I'm like, whew, that's going to be a scary project to bring on your very first time.
The other important thing is to lean on professionals. So, for example, like if you work with a printer, you have to ask the printer what you need to do. As in, like every printer has a different preprint process, different standards, different file formats, different margins, whatever, all those different things. Ask the printer. Then you make the PDF and you send it to the printer and you say, hey, is this okay? And they say, no, it's wrong because of all these reasons. And then you repeat that and they send you exactly the same answer, but for different reasons. And you repeat this printer pre-pressed dance forever, since the dawn of time, until finally it's good. And you can go to press. And if the printer says this is going to be all right, it's going to be all right, because they do it like it's their life job. Like printers do that.
Yeah,
I have the impression that like there are very few jobs that like one start to do and then keeps on doing with that kind of like how to say, I won't say persistence, but like whatever. Let's say persistence.
Did it take you a while to find the printer that you like to work with, like with different projects?
No. However, a printer basically like ghosted me, so I stopped using them. Another one folded, so I stopped using them. And for Gaub, I asked Zach of Soul Mapper, hey, Zach, where do you print stuff? And Zach was like, go to TRT. And now when people ask me, where do I print books, nice hardcovers in Europe or America, it doesn't really matter because like shipping a pallet of books is about like $1,000 across the Atlantic. So in the grand scheme of things, is not a lot if you have to make a decent print run. There are three, what I call the holy trinity of the Baltic printers. And there are TRT, which is in Estonia. There is Livonia, which is in Latvia. And there is Standard, which is in Lithuania. And they make excellent work. essentially the entirety of the in the OSR wing prints with them, and they are, I don't want to say they're equivalent because they're not equivalent, but after a while you know the people that work with your printer, so unless like something bizarre happens, you just stick with whichever printer works for you. For smaller things, for smaller print runs, I go to Mixam, because smaller print runs for me means like kind of like cheaper books, so it doesn't really matter if it's not perfect. Mixam has a bit of up and downs, but it's always been okay for me. I know that other people are not as lucky. So,
and for those that might not know, but Mixam is kind of like the Expedia of basically printing, where they have their printers that they use on a regular basis. You send it in, and you have no idea which printer is actually going to take on that job.
Correct. Same for Lulu.
Yeah.
Lulu also has a network of printers. You never know.
Just on a funny side note, I'm located here in Calgary, Alberta, Canada, and there's a local printer that lots of people use, not specifically for games, but I had them do a print job for me, and there's a few little kind of issues I was like concerned with, and I thought, well, I'm just going to throw out the same file to Mixam. I uploaded it, boom, boom, boom. I had it like proofed essentially, like, and done, and I had it like way more print draft copies to me quicker than the local printer. And they're a part of me was like, I wonder if they're actually the same printer.
Might be.
But I could tell they were different. So, but I was concerned a little bit that they'd go like, why are you using a second printer? Why are you testing us out? It's kind of funny, just the way it works. You never know who's going to print, and it could have actually been the same printer doing both.
Yeah,
the color was different, so I could tell.
Okay,
they were slightly different.
What else? Yeah, like I'm very sorry to say this, but like the way to be good is through, like, the way to get good at things is to be bad at things first.
Yeah, and keep your projects small, and like build up that skill set and knowledge.
So the advantage of getting projects small is that the time to delivery is smaller, so you can complete a project in a smaller amount of time. And completing a project is a very important skill to have, because it's not only the fact that you're working on it, but also at some point you have to decide, we are done, we are going to press, full stop. And I in my book production role, I have this part where toward the end of a project where I take the PDF, print it. I have laser printers in the house, multiple laser printers, as in two. I print it, and then I either literally put every spread on the floor, one next to each other, so I can look at the entire book.
Yeah.
Or I just print it and look at it and page through it, and I bind a copy for myself. Recently, I even started to use print on demand to print an early copy for myself, so I can just use the book. Because until you have a book, you don't know how the book will behave in people's hands. And after that happens, I switch from being like a considerate, kind of like, I don't want to say slightly anxious, but like a bit like, careful. Oh, we need to get things done with attention and whatever, to this needs to be shipped mode. As in, like, I will now grind through every page several times until it's done, and it will be done, and we will go to press, hell or high water.
Yeah. And that's the beauty of just digital only, right? You can always
you can always patch it.
Yeah.
Also with print on demand.
Your background in software engineering, like, did that help you as far as like seeing all the checkboxes and project management pieces that need to flow into any game?
I really wish I could show you the project management file I built for Gaub, because Gaub had 7 writers working on a lot of different types of content. So every writer wrote spells, 7 spells, 7 microfictions, at least 2 monsters, 7 items, and I think 7 catastrophes. And it's 7 different people. And when I joined the team, because they were a team already, when I joined the team, I couldn't tell them apart. So there was this thing where, like, oh, I'm speaking with John.
Yeah.
John is one of the many heads of the project. And they called it, like, basically I treated it like an egregore, you know, like this collective astral presence that manifests through my Discord channel. But essentially I had like these crazy grids of checkboxes going through different colors to show where the project was, and then a master list of production for me. Gaub was, and Gaub was frankly a miracle that it came this good.
You're only as strong as your weakest link, right? If one person doesn't come through, you are in big trouble.
Yes, but then we all, like, the team really pushed. The team was really cohesive, and they found that to be extremely validating and powerful. When someone struggled, they went on the Discord and was like, hey, I have this thing, like, is this thing Gaub enough? And then posted a snippet. It was like, it could be more Gaub if blah, blah, blah. Or, yeah, that's very Gaub. Well done.
I think you need 3 t-shirts there. Is this Gaub enough?
Yes. I should do it.
You should.
Yeah,
put this killer logo on it, or
I should put the killer logo on it.
Yeah.
Oh, fuck, man. Yeah.
Is that Gaub enough?
Is that Gaub enough? I should totally do it. But yeah, no, it was like an incredible project to run. And Mon helped some. It was really helpful because it was part of the writing collective, the Viziers before me. But also something else I've done for that project that I believe like was really important was actually go and extensively copy edit and dev edit all the game mechanics part of it. Some of the spells went through rounds of rewriting and simplification. So, for example, there is this spell that summons a trapdoor in the lowest level of a building. It's called abattoir. And you spit out a key and you open the trapdoor. And there is a 10 by 10 by 10 room inside. And then when you close the trapdoor, it vanishes. And then when you cast it again, it comes back again, and it's your own cellar. Like every wizard has their own cellar. And basically what happens is that you're supposed to feed it. And it has a gutter. Sorry, it has a drain hole and some gutters.
Mm-hmm.
There is this like line, and that's how it feeds the spell. And it had like complex rule on how to feed it and what happened if you don't feed it and like blah blah blah. And then I replaced this whole like bunch of like rules with like clauses and counter clauses, whatever, with do not let the seller go hungry, which is ominous because you know what's gonna happen, and it's terrible.
with that book, like as far as like all the different projects go, how has it been as far as like where do you enjoy sitting do you like the project management? Do you like the writing? Do you like doing it all? Do you like the bigger vision of it?
So Lost Pages exists for two reasons. The first one is that we need more and better spell books. The second one is that I love pretty books. And so I don't know, like I really like helping people develop their ideas and like making them into something that exists. And I think that's why I found myself in a good place with Gaub. I have a hard time on my own, like working on things on my own sometimes, especially if they're creative. But also I really like book production and book design. I really love like coming out with like things like in Gaub, for example, the chapter marker is the little hand, and you can see that there is a finger that is darker, and that tells you in which chapter you are. And incidentally, the finger that is not there is just never there, except in its own chapter, where it's the only place where you can see it. And like, you know, finding all these things on the layout,
little tiny
deciding
details,
all the details that like they might be tiny and like a small accent here and there, but together they form something.
An experience almost when you're reading it and flipping through it, you feel something from the book.
Yeah, and so for example, like in Wulfwald, we went with a much more toned down design. I almost wanted to like it's as a design is clearly inspired by the Little Brown Books, by the original D&D.
And I should hold up here. I've got a box of it.
Yeah.
And so, were you excited to do a box set?
It's not my first box set, but yes.
Not? Oh, okay.
No, like my first box set is.
I'm having a tough time getting it open here, but. And then.
This is my first box set.
Okay.
And it's a campaign setting. It has 3 little books and some maps and handouts. And you play an apprentice wizard in a magic university. And it's weird. It's so weird. But yes, I was really excited about making a new box set because there are not enough box sets for D&D. I love box sets.
Do you get the boxes that at the same place as the printers, or is it like a whole separate
No,
thing?
I actually made these myself, about 200 copies. Some of them I actually assembled the box myself.
Wow.
But all of them I stuck on, like I cut and stuck the sticker on it.
Yeah.
Kind of like Gygax did, but doing a better job.
And so just to finish up, inside the box, I'm holding it all wrong here. Inside the box, you've got all the booklets.
Yeah.
The different 5 booklets, as well as this really kick-ass
cloth map. Yeah, that was drawn by Russ Nicholson. That worked on Fiend Folio, Warlock on the Firetop Mountain, early Games Workshop stuff. And he sadly passed away last year.
Yeah.
Before the game was released. So that's why there is a small dedication to Russ.
Oh, nice. I didn't notice that. That's cool.
He drew all these little monsters here. That he delivered us like all these like cute little monsters.
Yeah.
The eagle and like whatever these things are.
So okay, let's pump this up here because we've been talking about game design and publishing and all that kind of stuff. Let's make some money here. Wulfwald.
Yes.
Tell us What is it? How can they buy it? How much it is roughly?
So Wulfwald is about $50, 40
Yep.
quid. It's on the shop. The shop is at shop.lostpages.co.uk, or if you go to lostpages.co.uk or to my Instagram, there is a link to the shop. And we ship from both the US and from the UK. So if you are US based, it's going to be reasonably cheaper. I think it's about like £5 shipping from the US.
Yeah.
And
what is it?
It's a campaign setting, and you play a criminal. You play a bandit, as in like you've been banned, and you have no place in civilization. Like you have the same, like you're a wolf head. It means that everybody can kill you, like if you were a wolf. They can kill you and take your stuff. The only way you can have safety is to do the dirty work for a lord. You're basically playing expendables in meeting Anglo-Saxon times. So the lord will use you to kill monsters, patrol difficult places, find out where, like go and explore where people vanished, kill their relatives, because like that's how nobles got richer back in the day, by killing other nobles very often. And you only get experience from the gifts that your lord gives to you in public, because Wulfwald is a game about doing horrible stuff, trying to get socialization. And you actually play a murder hobo. Like this is a game where everybody is a real murder hobo. And you can be a wizard murder hobo, a fighter murder hobo, but essentially like you're playing a wolf head. Like I don't want to say that you normally sleep in a ditch, but it's not beneath you.
And so you've got the books, you got magic, the campaigns, monsters, people, and the wolf heads themselves, in the rule set and that kind of thing. And how customized is the rule set compared to what people might be used to?
Okay, so Wulfwald is a bring your own rules. So it doesn't explain you how to attack, because if you ever play Dungeons and Dragons and they tell you you have armor class 16 and you have plus 2 to hit, you know what you have to roll.
Yeah.
It has 12 different classes. The classes are based on, I'm just bringing up the handbook. For example, this is the Shield Maiden. Every class has a spread with an illustration. And every class has 3 levels. It's kind of based on Dave Arneson Blackmoor. So there is like veteran, hero, superhero. So level 1, 4, and 8. So the scale is basically like soldier, ogre, dragon. And every fighter, for example, has a maneuver and does something specific, special on a critical or on a fumble in combat. And also every class has a different perk. There are also 3, let's call them like folks. So there are human, like they're all human, but there are the men of the earth, the Earthward, which are essentially the Anglo-Saxon. The game is written from their perspective. And they are essentially like your humans. Then there are the Red Lingas, which are sort of Celts. So they are talked about by the Earthworld as some kind of like, bandits and looters and whatever. Basically, imagine all the people, like all the things that English nationalists say about the Irish or whatever, or the Welsh through history. And that it's the kind of prejudice, because like Earthworlds are like, the people in this game are terrible. Like, don't get me wrong, everybody's terrible in this game. And then there are elves and dwarves, and they are also human. And for every race, they're all human, but whatever. For every kind of like people, There are 3 classes. There is like line fighter, skirmisher, and wizard. And the 4 wizards have completely different spell systems. Like the human necromancer, the shining ones have this thing about summoning spirits and either using them as like apparitions or bringing them up the undead or similar things. The dwarves, the dwarves fate weavers have rune casting, and they can use the runes as spells to enchant items, to inscribe them. The elves are like the songs of the forest. They can charm. They can cast geas on people. And the witches of the Redalingas are witches that do potions, they do poisons, they do healing balms. And the 4 magic classes they all have completely different mechanics. And I say this because I was at the end a bit, don't want to say confused, but I thought like this is a bit too much. So I made checklist. So this is the checklist for the dwarves, and every rune you track how it's been used. And then there is for the elf spell singers, there is for the necromancer, the necromancers accrue corruptions. So for example, they can be they can smell of grave, they pile up.
So here's an interesting question
necromantic thing, essentially,
about the different spell systems. Most designers would have said, well, which is the best one? Just use that. And I'm going to go with it. So what drives you to go, no, I want to add texture and different types of rules and mechanics and spells?
In Wulfwald?
Yeah, well, just in Wulfwald, and but like in general, like why do you find that interest? Like as far as like looking at a game, most people would have just said, no, just pick one and just go with it. And as far as like why is it important and cool to have like 4 different unique ones in a setting?
First, because I believe that like different traditions have different ways of doing things, and if you have add magic support, like add system, like game mechanical supports, add a game system for it, I think that the game becomes richer because you have different ways to interact with different parts of the system. Also, the magic effects of the 4 spellcasters hardly overlap at all. But also, ultimately, I believe like it's just a matter of having a richer experience. And I find Vanchan spell memorization kind of frustrating. I haven't had a game where I haven't run a game with normal spell memorization in, I don't know, 15 years. I normally have a system where you can cast, you don't memorize. You can spend slots on spells but you cannot cast the same spell twice in a day.
Yeah.
And every time, but like, as I explained to my players that use wizards, every time, these are all rules, but it's not mandatory to follow the rules. Like if you want to ignore the rules that say you cannot cast level 9 spells at level 1, you can. But every time you ignore rules, there's going to be consequences. It's a matter of like, to boil it down, it's a matter of health and safety. But it's also a matter of like giving option to the players and giving them, like empowering them to make choices that might be terrible for everybody.
Yeah.
And they find this like power is a double, like it's like, I can't remember where I read this, but it's something like, it was a phrase, something like sorcery is a sword with no handle.
Mm-hmm.
whichever way you grab it, it's gonna hurt.
Yeah.
And you just have to accept that, like, if you do it irresponsibly, maybe the price is not going to be worth it.
Yeah.
And like, my players all know that I give their wizards more than enough rope to, hang themselves in a way. It's like, yeah, you can cast as many spells as you want. I'm not here to stop you. Like, if you want to shred your soul to tatters as you do it, enjoy.
Yeah.
Like,
magic is dangerous.
In Chtonic Codex, there was, for example, this thing called mana tar. And it's just like tar. It seeps out of the ground. And it has many magic properties. But the most important is that if you touch it, you can drain it from its magic. So instead of using a spell slot, you tap the tar. The tar dries up. It's kind of like some sort of like tar, and kind of like becomes like shale as you drain it. It becomes like more and more solid, and then it becomes brittle and falls apart. Mm-hmm. Except, like, the more you use it, you start to have bad side effects. It's called the burning inside. And, like, you start to bleed from your eyes. You start to have like bad side effects, and like if it goes too high, you start to physically burn up. And as you burn up, you're probably gonna die, because like at that point you had way too much magic energy go through you. That you are, however, so much charged with magic that the magic that you cast at that point is incredibly powerful. You can cast even more magic. Knowing that like it's going to be literally your last blaze of glory. And by literally I mean like you're literally blazing up.
Let's talk about Beyond the Pale. That's another book that Lost Pages has done.
Yeah. Beyond the Pale is a very interesting inception. I was at Bonjour, which is was like a trance club here in Glasgow. For karaoke night, and I was slightly tipsy. I was doom scrolling on Twitter because I needed to distract myself from the horrible karaoke that was happening in the background. I really liked the vibes, but like whatever. And they saw that like Yokai was posting like the amazing illustrations for the book that he had already done, and I literally slid in his DMs and said, "Hey, do you have a publisher?" And he goes like, "No." I was like, "Do you want a publisher?" And that's how we made it. And 6 months later, we did the Kickstarter. Yeah. Like it was literally like beginning May, and like in November, like late November, we started Kickstarter. It was a very, very fast production. We went from, "Hey, do you need a publisher?" to the book is shipping in 1 year.
It was very fast, and I know Yohai was also in the middle of Karen, second edition, or is it second edition? Anyways,
Karen second edition. We actually had to do the Beyond the Pale Kickstarter at that point to avoid running two campaigns too close to each other.
Yeah.
Beyond the Pale is a good book. Like, I'm really happy with it. I'm happy with the way it came out. I'm happy with the story it tells. I'm happy with... I'm happy that I published it, because we are... As a publisher, we're going toward more being inspired and putting out things that are based on real-world magic, esoterica, mysticism, call it whichever way you want to call it. And Beyond the Pale, I believe like there is no book that quite ever did what that did for Jewish mysticism. I'm actually not sure if there is anything similar beside maybe like, I don't know, Nephilim or Ars Magica. Anything quite close to it in scope. Yes, that map is drawn that way because the map of Cast, because that's how they used to hand draw maps in the period. So that's based on real world map from that time period.
Yeah, it's a lovely little book that was done. I love the art. I love the elegance of it, in for lack of a better word. Like it has a nice feel to it. It has between the art and just the layout in general. Like it just, and what is this material called? I never get it right. Is it fake?
It's book cloth. No, it's book cloth. It's like cloth.
Yeah.
And it's, do I have any around? Yeah, not within reach. Anyway, basically, when you use cloth as cover for books, first you paste the cloth on paper, and then you use that to bind the book. Okay. And you can use like book cloth instead of leather, or instead of like other paper.
Yeah, and then you do the embossing.
Yes, in that case, it's been depossed. Actually, for Beyond the Pale, they just screen printed the image on the cover. Or maybe embossed, I don't know. For Gaub, 1 second, I'll take a copy. For Gaub has these like slight deboss, so you can see that like the hand is actually pressed down. You can see a bit of a shading here.
Yeah.
But also you can see that, 1 second, if I can catch it. No. There is a seventh finger here.
Yeah.
That is not printed, but it's just embossed.
Yeah, I like that.
And
nice touch.
The printer didn't know if they could do it. So there has been like, first it passed with a die to press it, and then they screen printed the different pattern, because normally they would ink it together like in a sort of like hot foil thing. So you put the color on the die and you press it, and at the same time it makes an impression and squishes it. While here they had to do 2 passes because of the finger that is not there.
Oh, that's cool. And so, but I know we were kind of getting low on time here. You have another Kickstarter coming up?
Yes.
In 2 weeks. Let's talk about that.
In about 2 weeks. So like 12 years ago, we made a book. I'm trying to find it. It's gone. Anyway, we made a book called Pergamino Barocco, and it was like
I'll you look for the book because I think it's impressive. So like I'll keep talking here and just talk about and you can maybe answer if you're an indie game designer and you're like, hey, you know what, I'm creative, but I really don't want to get into the publishing side of things. What would you recommend as far as, do you want people to hit you with all kinds of DMs and go, I got an idea? Or
yes. Okay. Yes, if you are working on something that vibes with a specific publisher, pitch it to that specific publisher. If you're working on like super weird magic stuff, my DMs are open.
Yeah.
Anyway, the book. So Pergamino Barocco was the first book I published that I didn't write myself. So it was my first work as a publisher. And this is the first edition. This is my personal copy, and it's bound in leatherette. But the interesting thing about this book is that it doesn't have normal pages, right? It's a concertina. A whole bunch of spells. We made this in a concertina so that the entire book can be shown at the same time. And it's not something you can do with books, because books hide their pages. Like concertinas, you can just like open them on the table if you have a table that is long enough. So for example, there is this spell here that if you project the shadow of an animal on the wall, you summon the shadow animal, but it's confined to the wall.
And I loved that you showed me before we started live streaming, and I was like, that is so clever. I love the idea of it, that the shadow, and it makes the kind of the whole mysticism of it just like sing to me.
Also, you have to cast a shadow in person, and the game master will decide if it's good enough. There is another spell that is really cool. This is like the appeal of the 7 worthy elders, and you summon some old wise folk to ask them questions, and they might have different opinions. Anyway, I bound all of these by hand myself, and I think I made an edition of about 30. Then we made a wee paperback, and for years I was trying to find a way to do a good edition in hardback. And I found it. Like, it literally took me 1 year and a bit of sending emails to all kinds of printers. And I made a mock myself of the book.
Yeah.
So we're going to have a 3-fold cover this time. And there's going to be different things. Sorry, it's not glued up. There's going to be different things here. Here there is going to be an ex libris plate where you can write your name. Here is going to be a bit of like aid, memory aid. Yeah, this is the new edition of the Pergamino Barocco. It's going to be in A6. But we're going to revise the content. Actually, the content has been revised already. I've done already the layout. I've redone the layout. And we removed the spell that we didn't like. We added another spell, which is the hand that feed what bites it. And all these illustrations come from alchemy books. Last week I went to Glasgow University to the special collection and asked for a book called Chemical Schrifter, which is this German book published in the 17th century that inside has a lot of like amazing woodcuts. And it's the origin of this illustration, which is going to be on the cover. And the Multifarious Mandragora is this spell that if you cast it, literally the hand of the caster gets like gadgets. So you have a broiling fish in your hand, you have like a crown on your thumb, a star, a sun, a lamp, and the key. And all these items have their own specific uses. And until you use all of them, you cannot cast a spell again, and that spell slot is sort of locked. But every item you can use once. And it's a bit inconvenient because the crown, which is on the thumb, is called the Fool's Crown. You touch someone with a thumb, and a crown appears on their head, adapts on the skull, like adapts on the head, and then shrinks a little bit, causing like a bit of damage every round, but also reducing intelligence and wisdom for a while. So that's kind of like awkward to have, and not like you need someone to hurt with this, like it makes stupid for a while. But yesterday I also received the mock from the printer. So it's going to come in this like butter paper, with this butter paper sleeve with a seal. This is the new seal of Lost Pages. We had like art just redone, and it's going to be bound in cloth. And rather than being just 3 panels, it's going to be also 3 panels with these little
cool
panels here. And this is just blank. Like this is just like to show that they can make this. The printer that we're going to use for this is the same printer that the Folio Society uses for this kind of like high level books. And yeah, I think that it's going to be good. This is a book I'm quite proud of.
And so once again, everybody at home, especially if you're listening via just audio, apologies, but there's some really good stuff. Check it out on YouTube. I always do YouTube first and then repurpose it for audio. So if you're listening to this on the podcast, the YouTube version is there. You can kind of see samples of it. And if you want to get in touch with Paolo, you go, I've got a game and it fits the brand of Lost Pages and the vibes that Lost Pages does. Feel free to reach out. What's the best way? Is it any of the socials?
Blue Sky, Twitter, Instagram, mail. Paolo at Lost Pages Co.uk is great. If you want to know when the Kickstarter launch, or like if you want to hear more about the kind of weird stuff that happens here at Lost Pages Central, we have a newsletter. It's called The Dreaming Guy, and the address to subscribe is dream, as in dreaming, dream.lostpages.co.uk.
Okay, I'm going to make sure all these links are going to be in the show notes and in the description of the video. And so we'll keep adding those. And when the Kickstarter goes live, I'll also add that in there. So if you're watching this in a couple weeks or there, the Kickstarter link should be there. And it looks like it's going to be a really good project. And you've been doing some awesome work. And I really love the bespoke feel to everything that you do. It makes you go that there's a lot of care that gets put into the work that you're doing, and there's no cash grabs here. Like this is, you can see the blood is in the paper.
the times I cut myself while doing bookbinding, it's kind of ridiculous. It's kind of funny. It used to be a sackable offense to bleed on the books.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Well, that's
if you blended the book on the job, you are sacked.
Well, that's good to know. I'll have to keep that in mind. But Paolo, thank you for coming on the show. Thank you for sharing all your wisdom. And all the links are in the notes. Lost Pages, they're doing some like really cool stuff. So, once again, Paolo, awesome work.
Thank you. See you next time.
And if you are a indie game designer and you want to come on and just talk games and talk about what you're doing and talk about all the creative stuff that you want to get out there, go to daikugames.com/game-pitch. There's a Google form there. Fill it out and just tell me about your game, and we'll get you on here. And don't forget to tell them Game Pitch Gary.
Hey friends, are you looking for a game that is not Dungeons or Dragons? Well, we got exactly what you need at Daiku Game Pitch. We got zines, we got OSR, we got adventures. But wait, there's more. We got solo games, we got journaling games, we even got card games and dice games. Oh hell, I don't even know what kind of game this is, but we got it. And if you visit us in the next 2 minutes, you're gonna get all the Zine Quest, Zine Months, Itch Fund and Backer Kits, Kickstarters that you can handle. Visit us at www.daikugames.com and tell them Game Pitch Gary sent ya.